Virtual camera. Hello. Hi. It says I'm live. Look, it is almost noon. The sun mirror is almost directly overhead, but we're not. We're not doing that today. You can just see the rays. Do 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 do. Okay. So I've been for the past like 3 videos. I don't know. For some reason, I want to be more conscious of putting you like giving titles to the videos, but they're not. I feel like sometimes it's easier than other times to like come up with a title, right? That's why usually I have a magnifying glass. Whoa. Anyway, apparently my attention is as was prior, is as it was previously. Yeah, I'm trying to be more intentional about putting titles. I don't know why. I don't know. I just feel like it. Sometimes it's easier than other times. Sometimes it'll be like, anyway, it's fine. Today I want to use the Dysology program, right? And I know I'm still like down here. There we go. But now you can't see any of the sun. And it's so like up close and personal for now. Yeah, just to like see what's up. Just to see what's up. And I can move this. Boom. There we go. If I mean, I guess you technically don't have to see me, but well, I'm not going to use cards today. Okay, sorry. I just had a thought. Um, yeah, it's fine. So what's this? 429 dash. What do I want to call this? I still haven't finished building out this. I mean, I haven't worked on it honestly in months. Um, I could continue. I was going to work on like packaging all the files and stuff so I can have it as a standalone program rather than it like pulling the files from my computer and then making like a mobile app version. And I think I saw that since I'm on Android, I can kind of just like download it to my phone without having to go through a whole bunch of hoops, as many hoops as if it were on iPhone, because then you would have to go into the whole like it's a whole thing. Um, anyway, so let's just say what's up. Also, before I do this, I had an impression today. Oh man, I can't do it on this one. I would have to open the other program. But does it still does it work? The whole thing just crashed. Huh? One second. Oh, okay. That's why. I was doing the random one. I was in the middle of so on the random one, I coded both the Diceology cards and the Fable Makers GIFs. And then on the one where you can like set the rolls and stuff, I was in the middle of like updating the code to reflect the combination of them, and I didn't finish. That's why it crashed. But excuse me. So here we go. This one will work. Um, let's see if it's on here. It maybe, it may not be. It is cool. So now if I click shuffle deck, cool. We get a random card. And immediately met request the land where all seasons reside to return to center. Should we start with a card? Window capture 3. And there should give this. Okay, or not. Give me one moment. Notes card. There we go. All right. Yeah, this is what we'll do. And then we'll just go along for the ride. And then whatever the card is, maybe see now I want to start with this and then get a card. It's fine. I do feel a little frantic. I guess. Another four interesting. An adaptive materialization. Maybe I should. Hold up. Let me see. Because I'm like, I know Mercury is not retrograde. And I don't always need something astrological to blame it on. Maybe it's like, what do you call them? A solar flare right now. Maybe the Schumann is like really high, and that's why um, the attention is coming up negative. We're in a deficit. Okay, or not, because this is not working. Maybe I'm doing too much, and I need to just. I'm gonna try one more time. And I'm gonna breathe. Oh, my teeth are kind of vibrating a little bit. Yep, it's not working today. Maybe it is. I guess it doesn't have. Well, no, because I was gonna say technology, because the phone, but then I was like, but my brain isn't a piece of technology anyway. Cool. Adaptive materialization, a murky mind or will, clouded vision. Am I the murky mind? Okay. Adaptive materialization could be um oh, can we do the thing? I mean, I don't think we can. The two completes the seven, but that's it. There's no five to complete the four. Six and three. The six would complete the three. So that would be 49109203. That's fine. Adaptive materialization, a murky mind or will, clouded vision. I like that it's mind or will, not and, for some reason. Right. Adaptive materialization is given like I would almost say Eight of Pentacles vibes, but I remember we saw the Fool in the Earth Day Astros 422, right? And I think I called that one. It was like communal expansion and personal something. And it was like the Fool has all the tools that they need inside the knapsack, right? The four tools of the magician he holds in his sack that he takes with him off the side of the cliff. So it's almost giving more that than like a straight up Eight of Pentacles. A murky mind or will, it's like it brings to mind um I've seen a few, I feel like more so anime. I've seen a lot of isekai animes, and isekai anime is basically somebody from one world ends up in another world. Sometimes they're similar enough, sometimes they're vastly different, right? Like someone from Earth gets transported into a fantasy world where there's like elves and dwarves and dragons and monsters and magic and knights and kings and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So what comes to mind, it's like when someone is like learning to cast a spell or something and they don't have a clear enough mental image to give the spell like stability or to have it like come to fruition, right? It's one of those where you have to envision it first. And so it's feeling like a vessel, but instead of a physical vessel, it's a mental, you could say a mental vessel. And that context, is it mental? An immaterial vessel. How about that? An immaterial, because immaterial could be mental or emotional or spiritual or anything that's not physical. It gives the energy of an immaterial vessel. So the murky mind or will, it's like trying to pour water into a vessel with holes in it, like a sieve, right? It's giving constructs, like thought constructs. And I'm not a licensed professional or even remotely educated in terms of, cuz like so I'm listening to this audiobook series that I actually love. When I first started listening to it, I was like anyway, and it's giving like emotional constructs. And I feel like there are similar things or like a similar methodology, if methodology is the word, in some kind of therapy type whatever. Clouded vision, I don't think there's a card. For some reason, like burning lands and clouded vision comes to mind. But okay, burning lands and clouded vision. It's like if those constructs, those immaterial constructs, are bound to physical existence or reality, right? And so, I guess, like the energy of a haunted place, there's something immaterial, emotional, mental, whatever, some kind of force that is bound to, intertwined with, interwoven with, um, oh gosh, interwoven into a physical place. Could be like the bricks in a house or the earth, the land. Um, but now it's like, because it's almost like that immaterial construct, like a foreign immaterial construct, has been bound to like a person's body. Right. So if you were to imagine a person as flesh and spirit, right? There's the flesh, the body, and then the spirit of the person that inhabits that body. It's like if the flesh were a wall that had gaps, and on the inside was the spirit, then there's like an immaterial construct that maybe it could either like cling to and then seep through, or sort of like gets in the gaps and it starts to interfere with the person's spirit. And then it's the question of like separation. How do you separate out a foreign immaterial construct from a person's soul within the body. And one way is force of will, like ejection, right? Which is basically like the opposite process. Instead of it like seeping in and then contaminating the well, it pushes it out. Either, it feels like forcefully or not. So then the adaptive materialization, it's almost like that's how you can manifest certain things that you don't want or that don't align to you. If manifestation or manifest is the word that I want to use, and it is, but it isn't, and not just because on the card it says materialization. Again, it's like there's some kind of contamination, contamination of the spirit. All right. I'm gonna type the whole thing, excuse me, in here. And I don't know, take it as it resonates. If it resonates, if it don't resonate, don't take it as always. Um, and you know, may your intuition and discernment find how it applies, illuminate and elucidate for you how it applies to you. Because it's almost like, well, I guess that's a thing, right? In magic, it's a mental construct that holds magical or spiritual energy that produces a physical phenomenon. There's just something about the transition between, you could say, states. If the states are like mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, and so on and so forth. Um, I don't know what we're doing today. Adept of materialization, a murky mind or will. See, and then that murky mind, again, with the whole foreign contamination, it's like I can't recall anything particular or anything specific, but it's like if someone's mental image isn't clear enough or sharp enough that like a spell goes out of control, right? Like there's some key factor. It's almost like you have something like a combustion engine, I'm assuming, right? If you have a combustion engine and you have some way to supply air to that engine, it's like you need a valve or a limiter on the intake of the engine, or else you could get way too much air or whatever and it would just like explode. So it's almost like that little something that one may not envision, which causes things again to like go out, explode, or not be how a person intends. Excuse me. Period. Am I putting the numbers too? Sure. 47, 12, 3, 2, 6, 3. And let's roll. Oh. I didn't click any of the boxes. We'll do these. I kind of want to skip these, but we'll do them. We'll do all of them. If they're not meant to show up, they won't. I made sure of that. Cool. So we have the six of zones, the tower, Neptune, the star, the moon, Aquarius, Aries, and a double root on the D8. Double root could be. Double root is okay. If we're in this theme of whatever this is today, uh, do I need a new Welcome to WTF Tarot, whatever the frig? Wow, I almost wish I had my Norse divination deck so I can look before and after frig. Whatever the frig, you know what I mean? Anyway, that double root could be within this realm. And again, right now we're just gonna go through it. If we find some low-hanging fruit along the way, we'll pick it. But I don't necessarily need to distract myself by looking for it right now. So we're in that territory. If we're talking about the again, like a mental construct for spiritual energy that produces a physical phenomenon, that root is giving not the seed of creation, it's giving like underlying principles of physical reality. Right. There are like you could plant a seed and water and nurture that seed, and then it grows into something. And that's a physical to physical. You don't change states, but in a way of like thoughts becoming reality. I guess yeah, in that way. That's like a change of state. Right. Even the process of creation is a change of state because something goes from a mental, like a mental sort of image, a spiritual impulse, an emotional, a need for like emotional release, and then something physical is created from that. Right. But the root is like speaking to that part of physical reality, what is coded within physical reality that responds to the other states, excuse me, to produce some kind of phenomenon. I don't know. The star and the moon. Neptune is easy. I feel like I need to blow my nose. I feel like my right nostril and my left ear are like, oh, six of zones, the tower, Neptune. Okay. The six of zones and the six of zones feels like the winds of Neptune because Neptune is a gas giant, right? So it's like there are, I know that like it has a core and gravity that like keeps things contained for the most part. Um, but it's like there are an ice giant. Okay. Making it the windiest planet in the solar system. Thank you. Neptune is the eighth. This is the who is this? Do I have a thing? I don't know. I guess it's Wikipedia. Neptune is the eighth and farthest planet from the sun, an ice giant known for its deep blue color, extreme winds, and cold temperatures, making it the windiest planet in the solar system with supersonic winds. It's composed of a thick atmosphere of hydrogen, helium, and methane over a mantle of water, ammonia, and methane ices with a rocky core. Neptune has faint rings and 14 known moons, including Triton, and was the first planet discovered through mathematical prediction rather than direct observation. Interesting. It's an ice giant, not a gas giant. But she was giving windy. Um, sorry. Yeah, it's giving that Six of Swords feels like the winds of Neptune. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So that's what I was gonna do. But I thought I did. Maybe I just didn't make it that far. Um, I guess I didn't make it that far. I didn't. I didn't. And honestly, it's just like some copy and paste that I need to do from one program to the other. Um, so I had an impression because every now and then, right, there was the impression of um, the ash and wet earth. And then yesterday, day before yesterday, it was that whole forest. Today, it was like wind, excuse me, wind just like whipping through kind of the forest, but then it went like tropical. Like it was like um palm trees. Yeah, they're palm trees. Okay. I'm like, hello, brain. They were like palm trees though. And because it was palm trees, it went beach. Yeah, palms. I'm like, they're palm trees, right? Yeah, they're palm trees. Because it was a palm tree, it went beach, but it didn't necessarily have to be beach. And it was just like windy. Maybe like a naturally windy area. It wasn't destructive necessarily or like a storm or anything. It was just like really windy. And so now we get the supersonic winds of Neptune. That's what I was going to. So when I originally opened the shuffle deck, when I originally clicked the shuffle deck button, I was hoping that it would pop up with the three different things. Um, and it didn't. It crashed. But I was going to pick elements of that and get a card for each element. Now I could click the shuffle button again and see if we get a Fable Makers animated tarot GIF that has moving wind, but it's fine. Yeah, the Six of Zones is giving me the winds of Neptune. Six of Zones is the same as the Six of Swords. There's no element. But we did get two chakras. Okay, we have Aquarius and Aries. I feel like there was something else that was. Excuse me. I feel like there's also something about Neptune being the first planet that was mathematically predicted before it was observed. And it's interesting because that means it preceded Neptune. Neptune. It means it preceded Uranus. And Neptune is farther than Uranus. The first planet discovered through mathematical prediction rather than direct observation. Okay, so I'll take it back. They could have observed Uranus through whatever telescope at the time, because you need a telescope to see it. and then predicted Neptune. See, that's interesting. Okay. Because the vision, it went like gale force winds with like palm trees. And then again, because of palm trees, it went beach. And then it went to like off the shore in the water, like all of the winds were sort of like swirling around this point. And the mathematical prediction of it being that it's like because of how the wind moves, or because of the velocity or whatever, because of how the wind moves, it's like there's something that must be sort of at the center of it. I mean, the star and the moon could just be giving like planet energy. Or I was thinking about the moon today too. And then I remember that whole thing about whatever the other day about like when we remember the basics, then the mysterious can be a lot more explainable. Because I was just thinking, like, why don't we really see the moon and the sun at the same time? I mean, we do sometimes, um, but like how that happens. And then I was thinking about the new moon, and the new moon being basically when the sun and the moon are in the same position in the sky relative to Earth, or from the perspective and vantage of Earth. And you're not like necessarily getting an eclipse, they're just like in the same general area. And then it's like, oh, that makes sense because so, and then I just like started thinking about it sort of in that lens rather than like there's a reflective side of the moon and then there's a side of the moon that's not reflective. And that's why we get a full moon. And, you know, the side that isn't reflective, that's when we get a new moon. Because it was just like, well, the moon orbits the earth. So, in theory, when we have a new moon, no, I don't know. It's fine. Right? When we have a new moon, it's like the moon isn't there. Question mark? Because when Earth rotates away from the sun, the moon is still like at that point relatively close to where the sun is. So then when we turn away from the sun, we're also turning away from the moon. So like we don't see it because it's absent, not because there's a glitch in the system or the reflectors are down or whatever necessarily. Right. And I'm just like, because I've seen the moon during the daytime before. And I'm trying to think if it's always been around a new moon. I have no clue. Anyway, but we still have the stars. Well, that is, I think, because now I'm like, I'm thinking of a rising sign, right? Your rising sign is the sign that's on the horizon. From what I recall, girl, from what I read some time ago, your rising sign is like the constellation basically that was on the horizon at the time you were born. So as the earth is revolving and the greater scheme of the cosmos, it's like facing different things, facing different stars. So not only as the earth is rotating on its axis, but also as it's like revolving around the sun, that would depend on, or that would could affect the constellations you see at night. Like I would think it would, but then I think of like Polaris. You know what I mean? Anyway, I feel like I don't know. It's like, excuse me, understanding, excuse me, concepts, not concepts, understanding the layout of things and how the layout of things, almost like how the celestial geography creates, implies, influences, affects waxing and waning forces, right? Like just because Scorpio is on the horizon at the time you were born doesn't necessarily mean you'll see the constellation of Scorpio in the sky, because we only really see the stars at night. And it could be a daytime constellation, or I feel like everything is so far that our position relative to the sun probably doesn't make it appear any nearer or farther, but it would affect like when we see it, right? Because if a constellation is relatively here and the sun is here, like if there's a line, right? Here's a line. This is the constellation, this is the sun, and this is Earth. If the sun is in front of this constellation, then we're not going to see it? Question mark, because we only see the stars at night. And that constellation relative to the sun in perspective from the vantage point of Earth, it would be during the daytime. But just because you don't see it doesn't mean that that influence isn't there. But if you're looking for it, I don't know. I don't know if this is giving like guiding star energy, if it's giving like a solar, lunar influence energy, right? Because, like, let's say that you follow the moon, and you follow the moon as in you follow the moon and where the moon is, not the cycles of the moon. You follow the moon. So there'll be times when you follow the moon into the night, and then there'll be times where you follow the moon into the day. Because in our rotations and revolutions, and with the moon's revolution around the earth, I'm pretty sure it's tide locked, so it doesn't rotate. There are going to be times when it's near the sun. And so it could appear that there's this like day, night, flip flop. It's almost giving like weather vane and the La Fruma. I mean, I don't know. The whole point today was no cards, so I wouldn't have gone looking for it anyway. I mean, I probably maybe would have just gotten the cards and then, you know, thrown the rules in the trash. Um, but it's like it could look like a flip flop, but it's like there are times when the moon, like if we could see the moon, it would be during the daytime because that's just where it is relative to the vantage point we have from Earth. And in the nighttime, see, but the only thing is that like that's why I'm like, wait, because we see crescents. like waxing and waning crescents, right? I don't know. Maybe for the purpose of this video. Because that's why I'm like, how does it work? And, but I guess the thing is, when you see the moon in the daytime, does it not always look full? Because I feel like every time I've seen the moon during the day, it looks full. Like you don't see a crescent moon in the daytime. I said no cars. I ain't saying no technology. I've already been on my phone anyway. Moon during the day. Well, here's NASA. Okay. This is the quick whatever. Oh, okay, okay. So the moon is visible during the day because it is close to Earth, bright enough to be seen through blue sky, and spends about 12 hours a day above the horizon. It is frequently visible during daylight, particularly before sunrise slash after sunset or during half moon phases, except near a new moon, too close to the sun, or a full moon only visible at night. So, yeah, during a new moon, it's too close to the sun. So, wait, so you won't see it during the day? Oh, okay, a half moon or a full moon because it's only visible at night. What are we doing? I feel like today was supposed to be relatively simple and straightforward, but it isn't. It's me. I don't know. Maybe it's important. Maybe it isn't. Well, because it's almost an equation. So, what also comes to mind, and it's come to mind before, is internal circumstances, internal versus external circumstances, right? And she's giving this one show. I don't want to spoil it, but in a show where there's magic and there's people that do magic, and they're called wizards. They're not. Um, they end up moving the moon. Emma, hey, how's it going? It's my journey buddy. Hi, journey buddy. They end up moving the moon, and when they move the moon, then it throws everything out of whack. Right. And so the magic that they've learned and the craft that they've developed that depends on or takes into account all of these, excuse me, geocelestial forces. And I say geocelestial because it's like the interplay between the earth and the moon, the sun, everything else. Um yeah, it is the show with the creepy moth guy. I don't did you finish it? Because if you didn't, I'll feel like really spoilery. Um, but since it moves, like magic becomes really unpredictable. And there comes a point where they have to save the world again because it's that kind of show. And the best of the best. Okay, okay. Um, she's like, I don't know if I can do it. Like magic is so unpredictable. And they talk about how the external circumstances have changed, but the internal circumstances can outweigh the external. And that, like, I feel like the whole energy of internal circumstances is that construct that produces a physical phenomenon. And that's like because the construct isn't because the construct is if the construct is and because the construct is an internal construct, it's only influenced by internal forces, right? And that root, that double root, it feels like it speaks to like a base layer of reality that responds to us. Just like there are responses to how the moon is moving and how the sun is moving and the relative position of everything, right? The moon controls the tides. And when we're tilted towards or away from the sun, the days get longer or shorter, which, corresponds to different seasons. Um, and maybe that's the Aquarius Aries, the self and the stars. I don't know. Again, we are deep in that take it as it resonates territory. I feel like the tower, the tower, well, I feel like the tower and the six of zones being the winds of Neptune, there's a narrative and a storyline that it fits, but I don't see how Neptune would play into that. Not Neptune as the planet, Neptune as the sea, yeah. Or Neptune as like the god of the sea. I'm gonna have to potty. I'm gonna have to potty. I know I shouldn't. I need to stay hydrated, but once I start, I feel like I don't stop. Okay. See, that gives alignment. Like the tower, because if the tower sits, oh, okay. Well, if the tower is something like what do you call it? An anchor, then it would make sense. It's a pole. The tower is a pole that the winds of Neptune sort of like swirl around and gather around. And I don't know if it's activity. It's some degree of activity, whether it's like absolutely no activity, so stillness, or a whole bunch of activity, like the tempest. But the star and the moon is giving some kind of alignment with that tower that corresponds to a level of activity, right? Either when everything is aligned, then the winds are still, and you can see the tower or the anchor of Neptune for what it is, because the winds have like died down enough. And then the girl, what the? Sometimes it's like I wish I could like create. Sometimes I wish I could just like project the mental image and it would be like a whole thing. Because with the South and the Star of Aquarius and Aries, it would be like when during that period of alignment and stillness, you could connect to the star. But I mean, it could be a metaphor for consciousness, um, in a way that's like, I don't know. It reads as like very higher self, but it's not necessarily higher self. Um, yeah, you'll have to let me know what your availability is for today. There is like one thing I need to do today. And I have that. I mean, I could do it like shouldn't take too long. Um, but before the end of the business day, anyway. Um, yeah, because it's almost like so you have Aquarius, which is that star energy, and then you have this root. So it's almost like a crown, but not a crown. Okay, so it is giving. So again, if you follow the moon, and the Patrick doesn't know anything about astrophysics of it all. If you follow the moon, and there are points in time where the moon is closer to the sun relative to our vantage point on Earth. So it said the moon spends roughly 12 hours above the horizon. Or the moon spends 12 hours above the horizon, right? Visible during the day close to the Earth, and spends about 12 hours a day above the horizon. If the moon spends 12 hours a day above the horizon and most of those hours are daytime hours, then you're not going to see it at night. Or you're going to see very little of it at night, right? So, in that case, if you're following the moon, there are going to be times when you're active during the daytime, and then there are going to be times when you're active at night. And so, and just like the constellation, right? If your rising sign is on the daytime side of things, so that constellation wouldn't be visible at night if they're ever visible. Are that I feel like the astrological constellations should be visible from Earth, but like, are they? It's like there'll be times where they're visible at night and times where it's visible in the daytime. Again, and the Patrick don't know anything about anything of it all. There are times where it aligns to the daytime, and there are times where it aligns to the nighttime because of the uh, geo celestial whatever of it all, because of how the solar system is set up. So that alignment, and it's Neptune, right? Neptune is the dream. Okay, all right. Neptune is the dream, is the imaginal, is the fantastical. Neptune, I don't want to say it's the architect because it maybe the conduit, not the conduit, like the supplier, the power supply. Like if we were to create constructs within ourselves, then it's like Neptune would sort of be the planet that rules them because it is, again, that deeply sensitive and like touches both sides of the veil type energy. And so it's like in the absence of external influences in the night sky, when the moon is there during the daytime, then it's like Neptune rules the night. But it's almost like there's no noise. because we are constantly creating these constructs that are constantly influencing our lives, and things are typically stiller, more still at night. We do a lot of our dreaming at night, generally, right? And, when everything calms down and slows down, there's a lot of activity that happens at night, generally, I assume. So it's like it's a time when there's like less noise in the environment, it's a time for the self to really be heard, maybe? I don't know. But because of that, maybe, because I go back to the murky mind or will, right? But because it's also happening at night, nighttime is when a lot of those that came up with was that the Nine of Swords? Where it's like if this is the thing on our mind, and this is like our activity during the daytime, and we're so busy and we're thinking about all this stuff, but as we like wind down, then like as we're like going to sleep, there you go. As we're going to sleep, then we hit this thing. And now it's like in our minds and it's playing in it. Maybe it's been ignored all day. And that's sort of like the barrier we have to cross to get to sleep, for the brain to shut down enough to fall asleep as it's letting go of everything else. Um, so that is where those foreign constructs, not necessarily always foreign, because sometimes it's just stuff that we have to deal with. But that's where those like other pieces and those other parts also come to play, and they can have an impact on the overall integrity of those constructs, right? And if they poke enough holes in the construct, then it's not going to be able to hold water, meaning it's not going to materialize as easily, right? And it's like in the presence of like when things aren't that quiet, then you have like the moon there and maybe some other stars or planets or constellations or whatever there to sort of like, I think obviously sometimes it could be play a combative role, but sometimes it can be constructive, right? And it'll make it easier, but in the absence, then we kind of sort of have to pick up the slack. But also, for this to be within the umbrella of an adept, I'm not surprised because it's almost that point where um I'm gonna have to go to the restroom. Yeah, I gotta go. I'll be right back. Sorry. I forgot. I totally remembered you watching that. Alrighty, I'm back. So I'm not surprised. I mean, it literally shaped, informed everything. So if I were surprised, it would be surprising. But I'm not surprised that the adept is here because it's again, it's sort of getting to that point where did y'all hear that? It's getting here it is. It's getting to that point where again, it's the whole internal circumstances, it's the whole almost like becoming independent of it all, right? There's like no moon to light the way at night, and there are no stars to be a guide because right now, relatively, they all occupy the same position as the sun. Or they all sit in the same area as the sun. And so it's just like tightening ship, right? Having a clearer mind, a clearer will, and clearer vision to become a master. And then I assume at the level of a master of materialization, it doesn't matter where the sun, the moon, the stars, or anything is. Because at that point, it's like you learn to work with internal circumstance in the absence of a lot of noise. But eventually you become like so proficient at it that even in the presence of noise, distraction, whatever, it's still sort of as powerful. I don't know. So I'm gonna shuffle this one more time. Just because I can. Excuse me. I was gonna do the three, but it's already been an hour, and it feels clean. It's the moon. I love it. Of course, it's the moon. You have the two towers or pillars. You have the dog and the wolf. You have the lobster, which is Scorpio, which is death. I don't know why I said it like that. You have that river that runs all the way to the back into the horizon, beyond the horizon. And I guess if you were to imagine, because as the wolf and the dog howl, it's like the moon is full glow, right? And then when they lower their heads, it gets dimmer. So it's like for as long as you can hold a note, or for as long as you can hold your breath, then it's that full internal moon. Then the vessel is um, interacting with whatever that deep root energy is to produce physical phenomenon. Because you see, again, like the ripples in the water, right? And it's like the longer you hold that, the more time the mechanisms and machinations um, the more time the mechanisms have to work with the construct to like produce that physical phenomenon. And then maybe eventually it gets to the point where, I don't know, somewhere down the line of mastery. Because maybe there's like the adapt the master and then the ascended master, which is a rank above the master. Maybe the ascended master can maintain that note nearly indefinitely and they produce a constant, steady phenomenon. right? And the adept maybe could only do it long enough to, I don't know, to get a single drip to drop. Right. We just saw the moon. I thought with the no, it wasn't with the high priestess. I gotta be. I feel like it was also with maybe the tower. So cool. Oh, hold up, hold up. No, it's fine. Excuse me. Apparently, I'm like, yeah. I feel like that's it, right? So the anchor is a bridge. I guess you could say that. The tower is the bridge because towers kind of are bridges, right? In a way. I mean, the Tower of Babel was to be a bridge between the earth and the heavens, but towers, skyscrapers, they stretch into the sky. You could see a tower as a bridge between the earth and the heavens. I feel like I just put oh, it was spiritual proximity. Okay. Because I wanted to title the last video before this one. And I was like, I could go live first and then do a title. I was like, yeah. Spiritual proximity is, okay. Spiritual proximity, okay. Was the whole thing about the angel in judgment, right? The angel in judgment with the chosen one, 144,000, Christ consciousness, and the return of Christ. Ripples, winds, and waves from a source point, an epicenter, if you will. You don't have to. The tower is given that bridge. Oh, so okay. So if you recall, the King of Cups had the thing for the orb that the Emperor had. The Empress had the complete collection. Or how do ow. I don't know. It's like this, like the magnifying glass. Here's the scepter. Here's the orb. The Empress had the complete collection. The Emperor had the orb. The King of Pentacles had the scepter, or the King of Cups, sorry, had the scepter. And so if the scepter, not the scepter being the bridge, it's like, and look, it even lights up. Um, I was like, that's neat. It's like something landing, right? With the night sky clear, something can land and dock to the tower. And then can do whatever. That's why I was like, "Ooh," but it's also like, "Ugh," right? Because, who has authorization to dock at the tower and who can enforce, um, who docks at the tower, and what are the intentions and all kinds of stuff, right? You can take that any kind of way, in so many kind of ways. But yeah, I feel like that's also why that clarity of will is important because it's like whose will? And our minds and our wills can be influenced by external factors for good and bad, for better and for worse, right? But yeah, There is also almost a Capricorn energy because Aries is the ram and Cap and Aquarius is the water bearer, and because Capricorn is the mergoat. It's like the ram plus water. So Aquarius plus Aries equals Capricorn by some stretch of the imagination. Or if you take a Capricorn out of water, if you separate the two, then it has legs like a goat and it's indistinguishable from a ram, like a mermaid that has two legs when she's on water and then a tail when she's in the sea. That's also a state change, right? From land to water. Now, the gale was happening or coalescing over the water. Like that's where all the winds were gathering, the eye of the storm. And I guess it's interesting because in the mental image, it's just like over the surface of the water. The water itself is slash was still. The trees moved, the sand wasn't moving, and the water wasn't moving. So only the trees really responded to the wind, where everything else was just kind of still. Excuse me. So yeah, I feel like that's it. Um, Low hanging fruit. It's a time of rooting out things that don't belong to us or that aren't to our benefit, that don't make us better, healthier, happier, more spiritually, mentally, emotionally fit or robust, that don't contribute to an uptrend in vitality. Um, and because it's an adept, it could be on either side of that spectrum. It could be on the side of the spectrum that is someone learning to exert and recognize their individual will in the absence of external influence. And again, there's like obviously a whole lot of chaotic things happening right now, but it could be the point where it's like it's so chaotic or it's so much noise that internally it's almost like still because the inside can't match the craziness of the outside type energy, right? Like there's so it's almost like if you live in a sort of noisy environment, right? There's a TV that's way too loud and someone that's yelling and whatever. But if the outside is even louder, then even going inside can feel like quiet, right? Either that or it's on the side of learning to exert one's individual will despite external noise. There's like that spectrum between the learning and the application and the doing. Um, and maybe too, there's always been that deep response, but because someone's will was dominated or directed by another, it caused certain physical phenomena, like their life to be a certain way, right? It's almost like how, I don't know, you could say low hanging fruit. It's that whole energy of like working to make someone else's dream come true rather than working to make your own dream come true type energy, right? Or all of the effort that you can exert for someone else's cause, but when it comes to you, maybe you don't necessarily give yourself as much, kind of like that. With the not like, and wills can be aligned, right? Like your will can be aligned to the will of God and the will of the divine. It's not a either or type thing. But there's a difference between like the will of God and the will of a hierophant. There's a difference between the will of God and the will of a pastor or a preacher or a guru or a mentor or a whatever. Right. And I feel like that's maybe an interesting paradox to put so much faith in a pastor or a guru or a holy person who is ultimately still a person, right? So, like us putting our faith in God or us putting our faith in the divine and not us putting our faith in man or mortal, sometimes it can be hard to sort of separate the two, right? Is your faith in God or is your faith in your pastor, preacher, guru, mentor, the person you follow in the divine or in the person that apparently communes with the divine on your behalf or for you, right? Anyway, cool. Obviously, we gotta get a final roll, right? We'll clear it for 29. Final. Finale. Final. Are we doing all of them? No, we'll do these. Yeah, sure. Why not? I've never gotten all nulls. Wouldn't that be crazy? Null, the star, Leo, Cancer, solar plexus, heart, water. So the star, Leo, Cancer, which is the sun and the moon, the cons, the zodiac signs that are ruled by the sun and the moon, the solar plexus, the heart, and water. I mean, Leo could be the solar plexus, and the heart could be Cancer. Uh, maybe it's other sun and other moon with Leo and Cancer. And then with the solar plexus and the heart, is that another sun and another moon? Like internal sun, internal moon, because they're chakras, right? What is the zodiac? The zodiac, is that like the translation of celestial forces for an individual of Earth on Earth? Because the sun and the moon could have came out in the D20, but it didn't. We have again because it's and it fits. The D6 is feminine, more feminine. The D8 is masculine, more masculine. When I have to, the heart being on the feminine, the moon, Cancer, the solar plexus being on the masculine, the sun, Leo. It is almost this like sun and moon energy, but without a sun or a moon. I feel like it's almost breaking my brain a little bit, but not quite. It's just like it's like the thing itself isn't there. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like a mutual friend type thing. I don't know. I feel like I struggle to find a metaphor. It doesn't necessarily happen extremely often. I feel like it happens often enough. It's like I feel like I'm trying to grasp it and it's difficult. The solar plexus in the heart being an internal sun moon energy, it's easy, right? And sometimes it's full, sometimes it's new, sometimes it's half filling or emptying. Sometimes it's there in the daytime, you see a glimpse. Sometimes it's there at night, maybe more often at night, or we associate it with it being at night. Meaning, like, there's an almost perceived, again, with the sun and the moon, right? We associate the sun with daytime and the moon at night, but the moon, it's like it's associated with the night by observational circumstance, by observation of the circumstances. But if the moon spends 12 hours a day above the horizon, there are going to be points in time where it spends most of its time above the horizon during the day, right? But because it's the brightest thing in the sky at night, we sort of kind of force it to be there in a way. Um, Meaning again, like I feel like sometimes when we talk about like a head over heart decision or a logic over emotions, it's like oftentimes we sort of assume that they're naturally opposing forces and they don't necessarily have to be, obviously. Right? The logical decision and choice can align with the emotional decision and choice. The head and the heart can be on the same page. It's just perspective that may imply that they're more adversarial or opposing or separate than they are. But again, you know what I like about the star Leo Cancer and the solar plexus in the heart? It's like it's all the star. Like both the sun and the moon. Like the sun is the star, obviously, but it's the way we look at the sun and the moon. Meaning the sun and the moon are two different celestial bodies, but we only see the moon and we only see the planets because they reflect sunlight. So the light, it's all the same source of light. And we know that that light comes from the sun. But maybe it's like it's the light without form. It's just light, right? So the star is that it's just light or the light. That Leo Cancer is that sun moon sort of duality. And then solar plexus in the heart is this sort of separate internal, because even Leo and Cancer, I mean, they're both in the sky. But in the solar plexus in the heart, they're like they come under basically a masculine, like there's the masculine solar plexus and then the feminine heart. Like they're these two separate things internally. So kind of like we make more extreme this differentiation that we draw through perception. And with the element of water, it's an interplay between them. There's a fluidity between them. So it's not necessarily wrong or incorrect, obviously, but it is kind of sort of like how like is both a photon and a wave. It's both like this sort of nebulous energetic thing, but it also has properties that are almost physical, right? With like the double slit experiment, sort of illuminating those almost physical properties. Like you can block the light, right? If you hold your hand up, you can shield your eyes from a source of light. But if light is also energy, then it's like, it's both. And water, again, it's acknowledging. You could say it goes, I would feel maybe because we just had the adaptive materialization and that whole everything that the past hour has been. Um, it's sort of like leaning into that interplay, right? Light is both a particle and a wave. So there are times to treat it with the knowledge that it is both. And there are also times to take more advantage of one aspect or another, right? Like the energetic principles are part of light is more interesting or more of note when it comes to maybe some kind of heating, right? Cooking eggs on the sidewalk in whatever place you can cook eggs on a sidewalk. Like you don't necessarily care in that moment that like light has physical like properties besides it being unobstructed, right? You're more so using that energy to heat up the eggs, to cook the eggs. Just like when you are, let's say that you're trying to watch something on a projector and you don't care that like light has energy, you're just trying to obstruct it so that a room is dark enough for you to see what is being projected through that projector. There are times to approach it with the knowledge that it is both, but there are times to not ignore different aspects of it, but there are times where other aspects are less important, less relevant to the situation at hand, right? Like knowing that the moon and the planets reflect sunlight. Again, sort of going back to that whole Neptune was the first planet that was found mathematically before it was observed. Like, even if, like, again, there's a whole aspect of like knowing that we can only see the moon and the planets because of sunlight, because they reflect sunlight, but like they would still be there. So all of those gravitational, astro gravitational forces would still be in play, regardless if we could see the planets or not. Us seeing them doesn't dominate their ability to affect us. They can affect us whether we see them or not, right? If the sun were to all of a sudden disappear and things got really dark, like the solar system would still do its whole reshuffle around the from what I've heard around the gravitational pull of Jupiter, if not anything. And Saturn's ability to like mitigate every other planet besides what Saturn becoming a moon of Jupiter. We'd all be moons of Jupiter if not for the sun, potentially. Anyway, the whole point is it's not that one, it's almost like the most enlightening approach one could take. The most enlightening. Let me get this off the screen. Um, the most, oops, wrong one. The most enlightening approach one could take is to understand that it is all of those things, right? We have these masculine, feminine, logical, emotional things within us that can be opposing, but they can also be on the same side. And we see reflections of that outside of us, right? And all kinds of things. And we can use those observations of the interplay when we can observe it as two different things, we can use observations of them interacting with each other to inform us about whatever through, divine insight and perception. But also, we can be cognizant and aware of the fact that everything we see, all of the light we see, is the light of the sun. And anything we observe reflects the light of the sun. Like it's all of that light has a single source type energy. And because again, it's like maybe it's like there's a time to push against the tide, there's a time to swim upstream, but then there's also times to give into the flow of things. And we don't always have to run counter to whatever. Not only not and I feel like the whole thing about exhaustion, like exhaustion is only relevant at a certain level of development, right? When you get to the point that you can swim upstream with ease, exhaustion has no say in whether you swim upstream or not. Because at that point, it's not going to be so much of an energy cost that it's any level of inconvenience, right? It's like if you get in a car, it takes just as much effort to turn left as it does to turn right on a level surface. Because basically at that point, it's the same playing field. So then there are other things that come into play. There are other factors at play. And again, so it's like there are times to work with external forces and there are times to work against external forces. There are times to acknowledge that external forces should be respected. And there are times to exert something internal, regardless of external. You know what I mean? Or what I'm trying to say? That water means there's this like fluidity between everything. It's not all one thing or all another. So, anyway, I don't know what today was, but it was what it was. Thanks, Em, for stopping by. I hope you all have an amazing whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever you need along your path journey and where you find. And maybe the moral of the story at the end of the day is there are times to drive and there are times to flow. And just because you learn to do one or the other doesn't mean that you can't do both or neither when you need or when is necessary or when you want because free will, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like, again, though, the concept of the construct that is the vessel for some other force that produces another phenomena, right? The mental emotional construct that is a vessel for spiritual, mental, maybe even emotional energy that produces a physical phenomenon or that causes things to transpire in one's life or environment. Like, yeah, almost, it's fine. It's already been an hour and 34 minutes. And I have calls to make and things to do today on this lovely Wednesday, 4/20. It's almost the end of April, right? 30 days has September, April, June, and November. I feel like I always mix a month up in there, but I'm pretty sure April has 30 days. So it's the penultimate day of April. And I know I said we're not doing cards today, but I can do this. Let's get a card to end April. One shuffle to end April. Well, we'll do one for to end April and then another for this month in general. So to end April, the Three of Swords. Whoa, but The rain is giving me like cleansing rains, right? Sometimes you got to cry it out. Emotional release. I feel like to see the three of swords for the end of April, girl, it's not whatever, but it is giving more so because something is felt, because something is released, now it can be moved through. It's very much of like there's something that has to be acknowledged and addressed before it can be resolved type energy. And the one for April in general, a bell that brings the physical and intangible into harmony as it pulses out into the universe, collision or cohesion. Interesting. Very interesting. I feel like that release is a part of this collision or cohesion. Again, with the whatever potentially that needed to be acknowledged and addressed before it could be resolved or before true resolution could be found. If that release takes place, it feels like things will cohese, come together harmoniously. But if it can't be, then things might collide. I said pulses out into the universe. Maybe I should have said chimes. I bet all that chimes. It's fine. Things coming together. And it could be for the better. But again, that Three of Swords, the end of April, it's release. It could also be like relief, right? I feel like especially those like cleansing rains that we're pouring in the Three of Swords could be after something is addressed and released. It's like a wave of relief, like a deeply emotional sort of relief. It could be a weight that was carried for a long time. It could be a situation that was thought dark or bleak or hopeless for a while, and then things change after being, addressed and, stuff. The resolution could be coming. Let's hope for cohesion. All right. I will see y'all when I see you next. Goodbye.